here you have the son of the king suing the king's ministers in the king's court. And that just creates all sorts of legal problems. And if it would only need Harry to have a conversation with his...
It began as a whisper, just another rumor floating through the centuries-old corridors of royalty, a question left unspoken, yet always present in the eyes of the public. For Prince Harry, it lingered like a shadow. For King Charles, it was a truth too dangerous to face. But in a courtroom steeped in silence, that truth finally spoke. DNA results have surfaced, and what they reveal has left the king collapsed in disbelief. The crown has weathered scandal before, but nothing as personal or as devastating as this. The test that rocked the royals. In a courtroom heavy with tension and years of speculation, the unthinkable happened. King Charles III was ordered to undergo a DNA test. It wasn't a scandal born overnight, but one that had lingered like a ghost over the House of Windsor for decades. Whispers had turned into tabloid headlines, and rumors had hardened into public belief. But no one could have predicted that, in 2024, a privacy lawsuit against a British tabloid would dig so deep it would force the royal family to confront the most sensitive question of all. Was Charles truly the father of Princes William and Harry? To understand the weight of that moment, one must first look back. The British royal family has seen its fair share of storms, abdications, divorces, secret affairs. But few have clung to public imagination, quite like the rumors surrounding Prince Harry's paternity. Ever since his childhood in the late 1980s and early 1990s, comparisons were drawn, not just to his supposed father, Charles, but to another man entirely, James Hewitt, a former British cavalry officer and Diana's riding instructor. With his ginger hair, military background, and somewhat similar facial features, Hewitt became the focal point of years of speculation. Even though he has repeatedly stated that his relationship with Diana began only after Harry was born in 1984, the conspiracy refused to die.
Are you Harry's father?
No, I'm not.
Why does that keep being repeated?
It sells papers.
That's heartbreaking.
Former palace staff have even hinted that the whispers were impossible to escape, even behind palace walls. Royal commentator Thomas Markham once described the situation as one of the most persistent rumors in royal history. No matter how much evidence was presented to the contrary, he said, the rumor never quite left the room. Online, it fared no better. Side-by-side photos of Harry and Hewitt routinely trended on social media. People treated it like an episode of a never-ending soap opera, and yet, for the royal family, it was a wound that refused to heal. Much of the speculation was rooted in the widely publicized breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage. Theirs had started like a fairy tale in 1981, but the reality behind palace doors was far from magical. A significant age difference, starkly contrasting personalities, and Charles's long-standing affection for Camilla Parker Bowles soon tore the foundation apart. By the mid-1980s, both had begun seeking affection outside the marriage. Charles rekindled his relationship with Camilla, and Diana, feeling isolated and emotionally abandoned, found solace in others, including James Hewitt. The situation worsened when Diana laid her heart bare in the infamous 1995 Panorama interview. "There were 3 of us in this marriage," she said, referencing Camilla, an admission that sent shockwaves through Britain and confirmed what many had long suspected.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Though Diana consistently denied that Hewitt was Harry's father, her confession only fueled the fire. Then came the lawsuit. Filed by the royal family against a tabloid for what they claimed was an invasion of privacy, the legal proceedings took an unexpected twist. In a move no one saw coming, the newspaper's defense team argued that their reporting was rooted in decades of public concern, and requested DNA tests to settle the paternity question once and for all. Courtroom observers described a stunned silence when the request was made. Royal expert Catherine Wilson said, "It was like time stopped." No one in the room truly believed the judge would grant it. Yet, in a historic decision in early 2024, the judge ruled in favor of the defense. He stated that the case touched on issues of such fundamental importance to the historical record and potentially to the constitutional framework that testing was justified, though to be conducted under strict confidentiality. Behind palace doors, panic set in. Some advisors begged the king to refuse on constitutional grounds. Others feared the precedent it would set. But after lengthy deliberations, Charles agreed. According to palace insiders, he believed the results would clear his name and finally put an end to the painful rumors. As legal teams battled over privacy rights and public interest, the nation watched with bated breath. DNA tests of this magnitude involving reigning royals had never before occurred. It wasn't just a matter of gossip anymore. It touched the very heart of Britain's monarchy, its lineage, and its future. But what convinced a reigning king to gamble the crown on a DNA test? Stay tuned. This changes everything. The prince, the paper, and the price of truth. The room was silent, but inside Prince Harry's mind, a storm raged. Just days after the courtroom bombshell that forced King Charles to submit to DNA testing, Harry now faced a truth of his own. A simple envelope lay in front of him, thin, weightless, and yet impossibly heavy. The woman who had delivered it, with her piercing green eyes and cryptic warning, had vanished as quickly as she appeared. But her final words clung to Harry like mist. The truth comes at a price. It wasn't just about bloodlines anymore. It was about identity, trust, and the cracks that had long been hidden beneath the polished exterior of royalty. Ever since his earliest years, Harry had heard the whispers. At first, they were hushed jokes among schoolboys at Eton. Later, they became vicious headlines, splashed across tabloids from London to New York. But now, in 2024, the world was louder than ever. Old photographs had resurfaced, showing Harry beside James Hewitt, his mother, Diana's former lover. The resemblance, some said, was uncanny. Ginger hair, similar jawline, the same military background. Social media exploded with side-by-side images, dissecting every angle, every feature. "Is this the real father of the prince?" screamed one viral headline. In YouTube comment sections and Reddit threads, armchair detectives debated his ancestry like it was a crime scene mystery. Harry tried to ignore it, tried to rise above. Meghan, ever his anchor, reminded him of the father he knew. Not just the man the world speculated about, but the one who tucked him into bed at Clarence House, who walked beside him behind Diana's coffin in 1997, who told him once that he was proud. But the seeds of doubt were already sown, and once they'd taken root, they refused to wither. Late at night in their Montecito home, he stared into the mirror, his reflection unfamiliar. What if they're right, he wondered. He'd always been told he was Charles's son, but now, even he wasn't sure. The royal family's silence on the matter only deepened the ache. Buckingham Palace offered no comment, no denial, no support. To Harry, the silence spoke volumes. His bond with Charles, already strained after years of tension, grew icier. Conversations became rare, brief, and often mediated. Prince William, forever the composed and dutiful heir, urged him to block out the noise. "Focus on your family," he had said, "not the circus." But Harry couldn't. Not when that very circus was tearing apart the pillars of who he believed he was. And then the informant appeared. No one knew her name, just a face. Calm, sharp, unreadable. Her presence was like something out of a novel. She contacted Harry through back channels, promising something that could change everything. "I have what you're looking for," she said, "but the truth has consequences." Against Meghan's pleas, Harry agreed to meet her. The place was carefully chosen, dim, quiet, discreet, the kind of room where secrets could breathe. She handed him the envelope. "Inside is everything," she said, "but once you open it, there's no going back." Then she disappeared into the London mist, as suddenly as she'd come. Harry stared at the envelope for what felt like hours. He didn't open it. Not yet. But the world already sensed what was coming. The moment word leaked that Harry had agreed to a private DNA test, the press descended like vultures. Every news network from CNN to the BBC ran stories speculating about the results. Headlines grew more dramatic by the hour. "Royal earthquake! Line of succession in jeopardy! The prince and the DNA dilemma!" Royal commentators filled airwaves with heated debate. What would happen if the tests confirmed what the tabloids had whispered for decades? Could it shake the very foundations of the monarchy? Or would the crown, as always, rise above scandal untouched? Historian Judith Linton noted during a heated panel discussion, "If Harry isn't Charles's son, it doesn't just affect family ties, it opens constitutional questions. Who inherits? Who holds power? And how does a centuries-old institution handle truth in an era of transparency?" The world held its breath, eyes fixed on a man who once walked behind his mother's coffin in grief, now walking a path filled with shadows of doubt. The envelope remained unopened. The truth, whatever it was, loomed large. And for the first time in his life, Prince Harry wasn't sure who he was about to discover on the other side. But what happens when royal bloodlines are questioned and identity hangs on one unopened envelope? Keep watching. This is history unfolding. Shock in the bloodline. The envelope was never opened in private. Instead, the truth came crashing into the world with all the force of a royal earthquake. Prince Harry had barely come to terms with the weight of the envelope passed to him in secret. And now, he found himself swept into a legal and emotional storm, unlike anything the monarchy had ever seen. The DNA testing had been arranged with the sort of care reserved for matters of national security. This wasn't just a family dispute, it was a test that could redefine history. 3 labs, each handpicked for their credibility and discretion, were assigned the task. 1 in Britain, 1 in Switzerland, and a 3rd in the United States. All were instructed to run parallel analyses. Accuracy was everything. No mistakes, no leaks. The court had appointed a retired judge, now acting as special master, to oversee every step. This wasn't just about genetics. It was about safeguarding the monarchy itself. The samples were collected in secret, at a private medical facility tucked away in London. Not even the most seasoned paparazzi caught a glimpse. King Charles arrived in the early hours, his car slipping through a side entrance beneath a blanket of fog. Prince William came next, discreet and stone-faced. Then Harry, quiet, somber, clutching Meghan's hand just a little tighter than usual. The 3 men never crossed paths inside. Each was taken to a separate room. Not a single word exchanged. With court permission, DNA was also extracted from preserved medical samples belonging to the late Princess Diana, still carefully stored after decades. And in a move that surprised even royal watchers, James Hewitt, the former cavalry officer long rumored to be Harry's father, offered his sample voluntarily. "It's time this ended," he said in a statement, "for everyone's sake." Weeks passed in tense silence as the labs ran their tests. Rechecked, verified, and checked again. No digital copies were made, no data stored. When the results arrived, each envelope was sealed, hand-delivered to the judge under armed escort. Not even the Crown's legal team was allowed to see the results ahead of time. The day of the court hearing, April 3, 2025. London was unusually gray, the skies mirroring the somber tension blanketing the city. Security at the courthouse was the tightest it had ever been. Phones confiscated. Staff screened and sworn to absolute secrecy. The courtroom was cleared of press. Only a select few were present. In a rare move, King Charles insisted on being there in person, flanked by his sons. He believed this would be the final chapter, a palace aide later said. He wanted them to face it together, as a family. But what was meant to be closure unraveled into chaos. As the judge began to read the findings, the silence was broken only by the sound of papers being turned. The tension snapped the moment the truth was spoken aloud. King Charles was not the biological father of Prince Harry or of Prince William. According to one witness, the king didn't react at first, almost as if he hadn't heard. Then the realization hit. His face drained of color. His hands gripped the courtroom rail. When the judge revealed the name of the true biological father, kept sealed from the public to this day, Charles swayed, then collapsed forward. Court officials rushed to catch him as the two princes, stunned, pushed past their shock to help steady their father. "The floor vanished beneath him," said one courtroom staffer. "He went from sovereign to man in an instant." Court was adjourned on the spot. Paramedics escorted the king out, shielded from view by large screens. A wheelchair was brought in, though many said he insisted on standing until the very last moment. William and Harry followed close behind, both visibly shaken, their private anguish momentarily united in concern for the man who had raised them. Back at Buckingham Palace, chaos had already begun. A throne shaken. After being rushed from the courtroom in a state of visible collapse, King Charles III was quietly admitted to a private medical facility on the outskirts of London. Initial reports downplayed the incident as a simple, fainting spell brought on by a sudden drop in blood pressure. But insiders close to the monarch soon painted a far more troubling picture. It was more than just a momentary shock, one palace source admitted. His body couldn't handle the trauma. It was like everything inside him shut down. Physicians overseeing his care quickly realized they were dealing not just with a physical reaction, but with something deeper, an emotional unraveling that had begun the moment the judge's words echoed through the courtroom. He was not the father of either of the boys he had raised as heirs to the British throne. The tests were final, the facts irreversible. For a man who had spent his entire life preparing to wear the crown and to eventually pass it down, this was not just a scandal. It was the collapse of his very identity. Doctors kept the king under close observation for several days following the courtroom revelation on April 3, 2025. The Queen Consort never left his side. She cancelled all scheduled appearances and remained in the private hospital room, often seen holding his hand, whispering quiet reassurances, trying to anchor him in a world that now felt foreign and unstable. But even her constant presence couldn't halt the emotional toll the truth was taking. Those close to Charles described a man spiraling into a profound psychological crisis. "He's cycling through disbelief, anger, and grief," said one confidant. "At times, he insists there must be some mistake. Other times, he breaks down, overwhelmed by what it all means." Worse still was the existential questioning. In his most fragile moments, Charles was said to be haunted by the same thought. What was it all for? Decades of duty, sacrifice, and relentless preparation, all now called into question. If the children he thought were his own were, in fact, not, then what legacy remained? While the king's health remained a private matter, the shockwaves of the DNA revelation were rippling far beyond the hospital walls. Public attention quickly turned toward the one person who could no longer speak for herself, Princess Diana. Speculation swirled. Had she known? Had she kept such an earth-shattering secret buried to protect her children, and perhaps the monarchy itself? Former members of Diana's inner circle began stepping forward. Some spoke cautiously, hinting that the late Princess of Wales had lived with deep, unspoken fears. One former staffer said, "Diana carried many secrets." She never named names, but there were moments when she seemed crushed by the weight of something she couldn't share. Her former private secretary was more candid. She would have taken anything to her grave if it meant sparing her son's pain. If she knew the truth, she didn't tell because she believed it was the only way to protect them. That belief was echoed by royal biographer Sarah Thornton, who noted, "Diana was fiercely protective of her boys. If she suspected or knew the truth, she likely feared the damage it would do, not just to them, but to the entire institution they were born into." The court, in its ongoing investigation, had requested access to Diana's sealed diaries. Portions previously withheld from public view were now being carefully reviewed. Those with access to the entries described them as heartbreakingly honest. In one passage, believed to be written shortly after Harry's birth in September 1984, Diana had scrawled a chilling line. "The truth would destroy everything. I must protect my boys at all costs. The secret will go with me to my grave." Ken Wharf, Diana's longtime protection officer, reflected on those cryptic moments. She once said that being royal meant living with secrets that would shock the world. "I thought I understood what she meant, but never to this degree." Now, as the monarchy reeled and Charles remained cloistered under medical watch, the truth Diana once feared had finally surfaced, and the world was only beginning to grasp its weight. But what was Diana really hiding? And how deep do the secrets run? Keep watching. This story is far from over. The Crown and the Crossroads. The silence that had settled over the monarchy after the revelation was finally broken in a way no one saw coming. Just 1 week after his emotional collapse in court, on April 10, 2025, King Charles III stunned the nation once again, not with another disclosure, but with a televised address broadcast live from Buckingham Palace. Defying both doctors' orders and the advice of his closest aides, Charles insisted on speaking directly to the people. He was determined, they said, to reclaim the narrative and confront the storm, not as a monarch shielded by ceremony, but as a man facing the truth. When the cameras rolled, the image was striking. Seated behind his historic desk, beneath the grand portraits of former kings, Charles looked noticeably thinner. His face bore the unmistakable lines of sleepless nights. His voice, calm, but weighted with sorrow. "My mother, Her Majesty the Queen, was a guiding light to me and to all our family," he began, his words slow and deliberate. "Duty has always been my compass."
Throughout her life, Her Majesty the Queen, my beloved mother, was an inspiration, an example to me and to all my family.
And now, in the most difficult moment of my life, I'm still led by that same principle: duty to truth, duty to my country, and duty to the crown I have served all my life.
In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set in upholding constitutional government and to seek the peace, harmony, and prosperity.
In a 20-minute speech that many royal historians would later call the most courageous in modern memory, Charles did the unthinkable. He addressed the DNA results with startling openness, describing his heartbreak, but also the clarity they had brought. Then, in a moment that would change British history, he announced his decision to step down. "I cannot in good conscience continue to reign under these circumstances," he said. "The monarchy must stand on truth and legitimacy. Therefore, I am today announcing my abdication in favor of my son, William." Shock rippled through the nation. Commentators were speechless. Parliament scrambled to adapt, invoking rare emergency protocols to facilitate the transition. While the abdication of Edward VIII in 1936 had been scandalous in its own right, this was something entirely different. This was not about love, but lineage. Still, Charles's message was filled with grace. Though I now know I am not their biological father, William and Harry are my sons in every way that matters. That love does not change. His voice softened as he closed. I ask only for understanding. Behind the titles and crowns are people. People who feel deeply, and who must now find a way forward. The next day, in a private ceremony at Buckingham Palace, Charles signed the letters of abdication and handed them to the Lord Chancellor, officially ending his reign. Prince William, now King William V, accepted the responsibility with a blend of solemnity and resolve. "The circumstances of my accession are painful," he said in his first statement, "but my duty is clear. I will serve with honor and humility." From California, Prince Harry released a brief but heartfelt message. "This has been a seismic shock for our family. I stand by my father and my brother and ask for privacy as we navigate this new chapter." Charles, now the former king, retreated to Highgrove House with the Queen Consort, who continued to cancel all engagements to remain by his side. Those closest to him say he has found a strange peace. His sacrifice, he believes, was the right choice. Then came one final surprise. A letter, written in Diana's delicate script and addressed to her sons, surfaced. Dated in early 1997, just months before her tragic death, it described with tender honesty the love she had for William and Harry, and hinted at the truth she had carried in silence. "Family," she had written, "is not bound by blood alone, but by love, sacrifice, and the bonds we choose to protect." As the monarchy stands at this crossroad, shaped by revelations no one could have foreseen, one thing remains certain: history is being rewritten before the world's eyes. But what do you think truly defines a royal? Bloodline, or the love that shapes a family? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.